I'll pass over to Brad, Dani, and Alex to talk more about using sustainable products in Green Star and Homestar projects. I have Brad and Alex in the room with me, and Dani zooming in from elsewhere.
Okay, great.
All good.
Thanks, Isabel. Appreciate it. So these are the topics we hope to cover today. We got a lot of stuff to cover, so hopefully we'll get across all these. So first will be introduction to the Plugged In webinar series, using products and materials with Green Star and Homestar, sustainable products credit, EPDs and Ecolabels, also reused material, recycled content material, and stewardship programs, low VOCs, LCA, responsible building materials credit, and other credits, and Homestar sustainable products. And then we'll have Alex join in to tell us his real world experience using all this information. And we'll have hopefully time for questions. So the Plugged In webinar products and materials came about because we had a lot of interest from both members in knowing more about sustainable products, but also people who have products and materials and how they can actually showcase their products to our membership. Hopefully we'll address a lot of the frequently asked questions we get related to products and materials in green buildings. And it's a chance to learn of new, innovative, sustainable building products and materials here in New Zealand. So in answer to the question, New Zealand Green Building Council does not certify individual products or materials. Hopefully at the end of the webinar, you'll understand why and what we do, how we do it. So there are 6 ways a product can be used in our tools. We've got the sustainable product credit, low volatile organic compounds credit, LCA, responsible building materials, and if the product can actually assist in fulfilling another credit in the tool, such as solar hot water heater would assist with the greenhouse gas credit. So this is the sustainable products credit in Green Star. Like I said, in a little bit, we'll be talking about Homestar. So this is credit 20 or 21? Thank you for that, Alex. So as you can see, you can get up to 3 points if your product can fulfill one of these requirements: reused products, recycled content products, environmental product declarations, third-party certification, or stewardship programs. And as you can see, if up to 3% of the products are fulfilled that, then you get 1 point, 6% 2 points, and 9% 3 points. So how that's calculated is you basically take the product cost and multiply it by the sustainability factor, which we'll talk about in a second. Long story short, the higher the number, i.e. 1, the better. The lower the number, it's not as good. So basically you collate all the sustainable products in value, and then that's the numerator, and then the denominator is all the cost of all products for the whole project, and that gives you the percentage. So this is the breakdown of the different ways in which you can get a sustainability factor. As you can see, reused product, you can get 1, and recycled content, you can get from 0 to 1.0, so that's based upon the percentage of recycled content of the material. And we'll get into more detail with the rest of these. So as mentioned, reused products, this is the requirement. Basically, if you're able to reuse a product on site, then you get this credit. So that's basically 1 credit, and you have to just prove that this is a reused product on the project. Then we have recycled content products. Once again, this is recycled content, and you have to show that the manufacturer has to show that the product is recycled content. So if it's 75%, it'd be 0.75. And then we have stewardship programs, such as Interface, where they're actually taking the carpet tiles and reusing them and just taking parts of them. And so it's actually either leasing or ownership of the product. Then we have environmental product declarations. So as mentioned, this one you can get between 0.5 if it's for an industry EPD, or up to 0.75 for product specific. An environmental product declaration is basically just being transparent about what the product is and how it was made. In a perfect world, the EPD would actually go from cradle to grave, but under our tool, you can just do from cradle to gates. That's basically when the product was manufactured and when it leaves the facility to the project. So real quick, this is how you navigate our website. If you want to find anything out about green building, authenticating green buildings, you click on that link, and then you click on Green Star, or of course, if you want to find out more about the other ones, you click on those. and then you can click on the browse section that will expand this below it. And then you can see there's a recognized eco-labels under the products and materials. And this is our page kind of explaining everything we'll talk about later, but in the future you can go back to read this and it can answer hopefully some of your questions. Basically, as mentioned, we don't certify products, but there are third-party certifications that do certify products that say that they're green. Just because someone says they're green doesn't mean it's green. These third-party eco-labels actually say that they are green products. So this page also has information on environmental product declarations. There's an article right here, so you can click on that. And then if you actually want to see the eco-labels that we approved here at NZGBC for Green Star, you can click on this. And this opens this table. So a lot of people just dive right into it, but I highly encourage you, if you actually go to this page, it's kind of hard to read, you're gonna have to expand it, but basically look at that salmon or pink colored box up there and it'll explain a lot of things about this table. Basically, the table has the different type of products across the top, such as adhesive and sealants. And in the underneath that, it has indoor pollutants or VOCs or product sustainability, and it has the actual credits associated with which Green Star tool you're using. So it's got the legacy tools in there also. So if you scroll down, it's actually a white box. That means that particular eco-label. So the first green section of the eco-labels, and the first one is EC and Z, level A recognition. You can see that there's no such scheme with EC and Z for adhesives and sealants. But if you move to the right, you can see that there is one for applied coatings, for paints. So, and then there's other ones on there. So originally our tool said that you had to have products had to be approved by GBCA. We understand that we've got EC&Z working towards having that happen, so we're allowing these products materials to continue to be used here in New Zealand until 2021. So that's about it for the table. Once again, please, if you go to the table, please read that pink section first. It will probably answer most of your questions. If after reading the table you still don't understand it, please give us a call and we can explain it to you in more detail. And then what do we actually want to see? So it's one thing to actually have this stuff, but with certified buildings, green buildings, we actually have to have documentation to prove that this stuff is happening. So we need to see confirmation of project costs from a quantity surveyor, confirmation from the supplier that the products are supplied are recycled content, and the cost. And once again, if they're using a third-party certification scheme, actually the certificate showing that it actually has that certificate and that's not been expired. So please make sure you look at the dates of that certificate. And then for EPD, we're looking at environmental product declaration certificates, evidence of product cost or product stewardship contracts. So the other credit was credit 13 is related to low volatile organic compounds. Basically, it's looking at paints, adhesives, and sealants or engineered wood products. So we're basically looking, you have to have up at least 95% of all applied paints, adhesives, sealants, and carpets meet this total VOC limits. And then for engineered wood, same thing, 95% of all engineered wood must meet the stipulated formaldehyde limits. So this is an example of one of them. This is carpets I've chosen. So there's two ways of doing this. You can either show that your carpet fulfills a product certification, a third-party certification scheme that we talked about on that table previously, or you can follow some laboratory testing. So this is just one of them. I think about maybe 10 different laboratory testing standards you can follow. And if you can show that, for example, with this one, it's below 0.5 milligrams per square meter per hour, then it would fulfill that requirement. Then we got life cycle assessment. Not going to get into too much detail here. We're hoping to actually have someone from LCA NZ to talk about a life cycle assessment going forward in more detail. But basically, a life cycle assessment is basically showing from cradle to grave what's happened with the building and showing how you dealt with it. And this is the actual credit. So there's one option is you can get the 7 points if you actually show that you've dealt with the whole building, whole of life, cradle to grave life cycle assessment of the building, compared to both your building and a reference building, showing that you're basically doing better things for the environment, or life cycle impacts. And then there's a bunch of different ways to follow that with those points related to those different materials. So there's also responsible building materials. Once again, not going to get too much detail here. Alex, maybe if you want later, you could talk more about it. But I will talk about the next slide. This is about timber. So basically for responsible building materials for timber, you can get 1 point for, or at least 95% by cost of all timber used in the building is certified by a recognized forest certification scheme or is from a reused product source, excuse me. So that would be either FSC or PEFC timber. And you have to be able to show the, what's it called? The chain of custody. Thank you so much. And then we also have the, for PVC, that if you have PVC, it meets the GBCA's best practice guidelines for PVC. We're not going to get into detail on that one today, but that's a standard you have to follow if you actually have PVC products if you want to get this point. So, and basically the other way in which you can use credits is basically if you've got a material that will work in our tool, such as insulation, cladding, glazing, stud types, linings affecting thermal performance, and moisture control, heating systems which affect energy and emissions related to credits in both Homestar and Green Star. So that's it for me. And next is off to Dani.
Hey everyone. All right, so let's so with materials, there are two credits in Homestar that looks at materials. Could you please click Isabel? All of it, yeah. And the first one is MAT 1, which deals with sustainable sourcing. Then MAT 2 deals with VOC limits. And in terms of what we look at and what ecolabels and certifications are acceptable, the requirements are basically the same as Green Star. So I'm not gonna double up on what Brad has said. However, we do have some additional things that we do recognize. So with MAT 1, that's a larger credit. It's a total of 10 points available, and it's split into 13 different material categories. In each category, you can get up to 2 points by meeting certain qualifying criteria, like an ecolabel, for example. For MAT 2, similarly, you can get 1 point each in each of 4 categories. So with MAT 1, you have 13 categories. You can get 10 points across them, and you can get 2 points in each category. So you don't have to target all the different material categories. Whereas for MAT 2, it's 4 points, 4 material categories, 1 point each. So as I said, there's different qualifying criteria, and they're not all equal, so they get different points. So when you are using a product, it's worth doing a little bit of digging to see what's the best points that you can get, because often products have multiple certifications, etc. And as I said, the requirements are the same as Green Star. And ecolabels count for both MAT 1 and MAT 2. Yep. Next slide. So these are the material categories. You can see we look at concrete, timber, interior linings, floor coverings, applied coatings, adhesives and sealants, and insulation. Now you could see that we have some multiple credits of the same type. So you can see that we have multiple product categories, sorry. We have several timber categories, and that's basically because we want it to be measurable. And you know, depending on whether you're looking at studs or cladding or flooring or joinery, for an example, you might be looking at measuring something based on kilograms or in cubic meters or in lineal meters. And if you could click through, the reason why we do that is because for any material product category, to get any amount of points, you need to have at least 50% of the total products used in that category qualifying for the points that you're claiming through the pathway that you want to claim them through, which is why they all need to be consistently calculated and measured. So which is why we have multiple timber categories, for an example. In terms of these pathways, as you can see, it's quite similar to Green Star. We have ecolabels So environmental choice, which is a type 1 eco-label, so you get 2 points. That's the maximum points available in that category. Green tag has multiple levels, so you can get 1, 1.5, or 2 points based on if it's green tag C, B, or A. Maximum points for A. Similarly, we got the Carpet Institute's ECS that has 4 levels. We recognize levels 2 to 4, and Good Environmental Choice Australia, or GECA, Smart, etc. And then we also have we also recognize FSC and PEFC as well, and they both get full points, depending if you qualify for them. Then ISO 14001 is 1 point, and then Environmark Gold, Carbon Zero certification, and CMA certification will be 0.5 point, 1 point, and 0.5 point. So for each of them, for an example, if you have an insulation product that has ECNZ certification, then you can get 2 points, but you need to have enough material that qualifies for 2 points to pass that 50% criteria. So if you're using 2 different insulation products, one has green tag B, for an example, so you can get 1.5 points, and that's 60% of your total insulation amount. Another has ECNZ, so it has 2 points, and that's only 40%. You only get 1.5 points because that's the maximum that at least 50% qualify for. Next slide. In addition, we have other pathways. So we have declare. We recognize declare for 0.5 point. EPDs, just as Brad said, we recognize EPDs. So with EPDs, if it's a product specific EPD, you get 1.5 points. Industry-wide EPD, you can get 1 point if the product that you're claiming those points for was part of the assessment for that industry-wide EPD. And then we also have things like dematerialization, recycled content, reused material, end-of-life stewardship programs, and for MAT2, we recognize indoor air quality schemes as well as VOC test data. Next slide. Now, in terms of how to prove that you qualify for these points and how to claim points, and this is something that's very important. With any Homestar submission, we need to see 2 things, right? We need to see 2 things. Firstly, what's being provided, and secondly, whatever is being provided qualifies for the points that you're getting. So things we accept would be things like receipts, quotes, photos. If you can click one more time there. One more. Yeah. So in order to show what's used in the product, in the project, you can use receipts, quotes, photos of a product on site. For design rating, we also accept specifications that require a certain product. And then on the other side, to prove that those products that you prove are used in the project, to prove that they qualify for the points you're claiming, you need to show photos of certifications, maybe on labeling. So for an example, if you get a bucket of paint with ECNZ, there's a big tick on top, so we accept that point. So that photo, screenshots of certification database, sections where you can see that product is listed. That's probably the best one, because in terms of what's current, this is probably the most reliable, and it's often quite it's generally the easiest to find. If you know the product has green tag or ECNZ or ECS level 4 for a carpet, then you can go on their websites and they have all the products that are certified in a database, and you can just show that the specific product, not just the brand, but the specific product you're using has the certification. Another option is product data sheets, scans of certifications that are usually available on websites, etc. And also information from product specifier websites such as EnviroSpec, which lists out the different certifications that that a certain product might have. Next slide. In terms of where to find more information, it's similar to Green Star. You go into our website, click on Authenticating Green Buildings, click on Homestar. It's 2 to the left, 2 to the right of Green Star. Click on Browse section on the green tab and click on Products and Materials, and you can get a chart pretty similar to what Brad showed you. So I'm not going to show that again. Next slide. And yeah, and that's it for me. And over to Alex.
Hi, everybody. So just wanted to start by introducing myself. Some of you may know me already. Many of you probably don't. But if you do, I tend to wear 2 hats, which sometimes can be confusing even to myself. One is EnviroSpec. Now, that is, as Dani mentioned, that's a green product database and specifier portal, which specializes in reviewing products to the various green building rating systems, not just Green Star and Homestar, reviewing all that documentation that has been flashed past you on the previous slides, and then turning that into what we call a green building summary sheet, which is, you know, how a product fits into these different green building rating programs. So I'll actually flash that past you guys later. And the other one is my involvement with the Building Excellence Group, and really that is actually just working on projects as consultants and assessors, so actually certifying the buildings to Green Star and Homestar. So if you see my name attached to a different email signature, that'll be why. So I guess the benefit of my involvement there with these 2 sides of the fence is that I have this opportunity to work and take my time to work in depth with product suppliers and their information, and also I get to live and go through the process of submitting that to the Green Building Council and claiming points. So if there's a roadblock, a bottleneck, or something that doesn't work well, I get to experience it firsthand. And then Brad gets to experience some emails from me to try and resolve the issue. But I guess that's the benefit of that relationship. It throws up any bottlenecks and we're able to iron it out. So 2 elements to that. One is finding products that comply and the documentation that proves they comply. And then the second one is assembling all that into a submission package to hand over to the Green Building Council, who then hands it over to an assessor or an auditor who knows nothing about the project and needs to easily find that what you're lodging is demonstratively compliant. So I'm actually going to start with the latter one, which is getting the methodology right for the submission. Dani mentioned that briefly, but a few tips and things that I've found work for me can be, don't necessarily use, certainly in the first instance, just the calculators or the spreadsheets that are downloadable from the Green Building Council website. So this is an older one. Here's for the version 3 of Green Star. That's for timber. And what happened there is actually there's not enough lines for us. If I come back to this is just 3 small screenshots that I've collated of a spreadsheet that has 80 or 90 rows to it. There's that much different bits and bobs of timber in the building. And so trying to fit it on this just would be a nightmare. So you don't have control of these. The Green Building Council has control of these. If you want to add a line or a row, you can't because the spreadsheet's locked. And so you'd have to email Brad or Dani, and it's just easier to use your own things. You can set it up as you wish. And then at the end, you could summarize the results of this into the Green Building Council spreadsheet. So this, for example, is just to claim the timber points. And as you see, it's set up exactly the way the builder wants to see it set up. So the builder gets an invoice for purchasing timber, adds a line to this spreadsheet. There's a date, there's an invoice number, there's the chain of custody number. So this is for FSC and PSC. So that's what Brad was mentioning earlier. And then you can easily just build your own formulas into the cells. You're buying 96 lineal meters of that first row of timber. And it's got certain dimensions, and you just build in some formulas which will automatically convert it to meters cubed. And this thing just demonstrates compliance for you. And remember, do this at the beginning. You start this spreadsheet from scratch, you generally have only 2 entries at the beginning. By the time you finish, you've got 100 entries. So that'll be one of my tips that I come back to later on. Don't leave it to the end. This is for the older Green Star version 3. If I were to migrate this to the new Green Star design and as-built, all I need to do is add a row on the right which says cost. And then I can multiply the volume by the cost and work out that sustainability factor if I need to, and so on and so forth. So use your own spreadsheets, make it work for you. And then you could take those final numbers, those final results. And so for me, I could submit something pretending that there's 229.1 cubic meters of compliant timber and just enter that as one row on here. And just include this spreadsheet as backup documentation and evidence. The other tip is, similarly to these spreadsheets that you build out for yourself and these submission folders, there's a lot eventually that goes into, especially if it's a big commercial building. So what I like to do is set up my email folders to look like the submission folders. And you can see here, this is for the same project. So if you look at that computer screen nearly towards the bottom, there's that MAT6 timber credit. And then it's subdivided into all the bits and bobs of timber areas that exist. And in there, I just chuck any communication going in or out, because at some stage, you've made a decision, you've put a data entry into that spreadsheet. 6 months later, something has changed. You have to trace your steps. And by doing it this way, your emails match exactly the submission structure, and you can trace that step within 60 seconds. You've found that email you needed to find. So that's a really good tip. And again, it looks scary now, but this has been building up for 18 months. At the beginning, there was 2 or 3 folders. So don't leave that to last, which is going to be basically my tip number 5. Don't leave that till the end, because you're going to look like this. But coming back to tip number 3, go on site and I guess take your material credits spreadsheets, or what the sort of level of compliance you're aiming for, and just walk around site. So if you've got a spreadsheet for your paints and you've got lots of resin, wallboard sealer and interior paints and exterior cladding paints, but you go in and there's large steel columns which are painted, then take a step back and think, wait a minute, is that on my spreadsheet? This is intumescent paint, probably fire rated. It's not going to be compliant, so you need that entry on there. So just by going and having a visual of the building with your product and material credits in mind, it probably just helps you ensure what you need to have in those spreadsheets and those data entries is there. And the next tip is, there's 2 ways. The polite title I've provided is always double check what you were given. The title I really wanted to put is don't believe anybody. So a few examples here, we're asking, for example, for receipts of the glazing to show that there's low E coating on the glass, because we're using that to claim thermal energy calculation points. And what we get is a receipt for the glass splashback, which of course is completely irrelevant. And there's other examples. We get declarations from painters, and there's a 210 square meters of wall to be painted, and the declaration says I've used this paint, and there's only one paint on there with a 10-litre bucket written down. It's like, well, you've not painted 210 square meters of wall with one bucket. So always check what you're given. Don't just take it from the supplier and put it in your submission folder without checking, because it's probably 50% of the time or 40% of the time going to come back to you saying this doesn't match up. So do it when you receive it, have a quick look, check that it's right. If it's good, stick it in your submission folder, stick that email into your email folder, which matches the submission folder, and move on. And that was 5 minutes of your time, but when you need to come back to it 6 or 8 months later, you'll be glad you've done that. So that's sort of just tips for organization. I nearly consider that the easy bit. So now probably just diving into how you find out if a product complies with the green building rating system, and then later on diving into literally the product rating systems themselves and some tips and things to watch out for there. So what you have essentially, you've got Green Star and Homestar, you've got all these other green building rating systems that are sort of in existence, and you've got they're all similar but slightly different. So this carpet product here will comply in certain ways or through certain criteria with Green Star and Homestar, and slightly different ways with these other ones. So if you're working across multiple green building rating programs, you end up needing to know quite a bit about all of these. Otherwise, you could assume that you could use the same, I don't know, VOC test certificate for the one or the other, but it might not quite be the case. I'm not going to dive into this, so Brad flashed this up earlier. It's the Green Star and Homestar. Well, actually, this is a slightly older version. So go back on the website where Brad and Dani showed you to go and download the updated version. And it's use this, the technical manual for Green Star does refer to the Green Building Council of Australia website. And you'll notice a couple of differences on there, which isn't on the screen, but for example, in the carpet world, CIAL, ECS levels 2, 3, and 4 are noted on this table here. So it's actually right at the bottom there, the bottom rows. And if you went to the Green Building Council Australia website, they're not yet on there. I think they're going through a process of updating, so they might appear on there later, but they're not. So whereas the technical manual or submission guidelines don't yet point you exactly to this table, but I think the Green Building Council either have released a technical clarification or are about to, saying just use this table, because in New Zealand that just make your life easier, just use this table. And if there's anyone listening who's, and there probably are, who's used to doing Green Star projects in the past, there's some old habits to get rid of. And so things that used to be compliant or ways of demonstrating compliance aren't the case anymore. So here's just a few. It's absolutely not a comprehensive list. This is just a few of the ones that maybe took me slightly by surprise. Or I just need to get used to the new format. So dematerialization, which was mentioned in Homestar, but in Green Star seems to have somehow disappeared from the sustainable credits section itself. So by not putting carpet in the first place, you would assume it's a better environmental outcome than putting carpet in there, even if it's got an environmental certification. There is the option of trying to claw the value and those points back in the new Green Star with that LCA credit. But I think we're trying to dive into how easy or complicated that might be. So that's actually something I've raised with the Green Building Council we're trying to look into. VOCs, it used to be all flooring products needed to meet VOC credits and criteria. Now for the new one, it's just carpet. So you pretty much don't need to worry anymore about half of the documentation. ISO 14001 and Declare used to be able to claim part points. They no longer can in Green Star. They still can in Homestar. So those two tables are slightly different for Green Star and Homestar. And FSC, this is a big one to get used to. Don't just go out there consulting to projects in the same way as you used to. There was a bunch of exclusions, so a bunch of products like interior joinery and installed furnishings and so on and so forth didn't need to demonstrate compliance with FSC to pass that mandatory minimum, and now they do. So make sure you don't just keep on with those old habits of saying, oh, it's a tabletop and it doesn't need to comply. Well, now it does. So that's something to watch out for. And now I guess just diving a little bit into the product certification schemes themselves and sharing with you guys a little bit of the lessons learned from my end and trying to shortcut potential headaches and bottlenecks that you might come across. So a product can be sustainable in a whole number of ways. And actually, it might be even better to think of it in the context of green building rating systems as not a sustainable product, but a compliant product or an environmentally compliant product, which means there are certain criteria set and it needs to meet those criteria with documentation. It might have a whole bunch of other sustainable attributes, but they sort of outside the realm of compliance, or you could potentially go for innovation if you wanted to. But think of it more as a compliance pathway. So one of these is life cycle assessment and environmental product declarations, which is a growing thing, and more importance is being placed on that. And it is a great way of mapping the environmental footprint of a product. The only thing is, when you're looking at it as a user trying to compare products or select products, it's not necessarily the easiest way. So here's, I didn't even know Jib was a sponsor of this, so that's quite handy that I flashed up this one as an example. Here is an extract of one of the tables of the LCA impacts of Jib, 10 mil Jib. It's not even the whole table. Now, I don't know about you, but what the hell am I supposed to do with this? It's just too much information. So for scientists or people who've got a 3-month research program to compare a bunch of products, this will be great. You really can dive into great depth. But for someone who's got a bunch of decisions to make yesterday, this is not really providing that instant feedback that we probably need. And it potentially gets a little bit worse. So you're comparing environmental product declarations. There's different scope and boundaries that these product suppliers may have chosen. So here's the example. I'm looking at an office chair. I need to find one. Well, I need to find the one with the best environmental impact. And then, supplier A has done an LCA and an EPD that looks at 1 unit of seating ready to leave the factory gate. So that's cradle to gate, which is accepted by Green Star. But the other one might have done an LCA based on 1 unit of seating produced, manufactured, and then used for 10 years, and then disposed of. So that's cradle to grave. And then effectively, long story short, what you get now is a bunch of tables that are complicated like this, and you can't even compare them anymore. It's not apples for apples because it's different units, different boundaries, and different scopes. So be careful when you read these things. Have a think about that unit, boundary, and scope definition, especially if you are using that to choose between 2 products. And then environmental eco-labels and certification programs tend to be a bit easier and a bit more transparent, and you sort of, as Dani said, you go on the website, download the list of compliant products, and you can generally print a certificate. However, something I came across, which I thought I would share with you guys, which is interesting, is one of them here, so Green Tag, which is an absolutely recognized eco-label. It came across this carpet product, which is used in New Zealand, and we were trying to claim points, and on the website, the Green Tag, the main predominant Green Tag website in Australia, it said under recertification. Then I call up, say how long for the certificate to come again, and then a bit more Googling, and I end up on a Green Tag website with this same product and with this certificate available on the right. And now I'm wondering to myself, well, hold on, why is there a certificate available when then it says under recertification? And then I dive a bit deeper, and Green Tag have got an arm in South Africa. And if you look at that certificate on the right and you really dive into it, you can see the words Green Star SA, Green Star South Africa, and then interior V1 credits only, so the IEQ credits, so the VOC. And this is not valid for the Green Star Australia or Green Star New Zealand. So they had to go then through this conversion process and update it eventually on the Green Tag Australia website. But just be a little bit aware, I guess, when particularly with green tag, when you download certificates, read the contents of the certificate, make sure you've got the right one for the right country, and then use that. So you may come across this one day as well. And just wanted to mention this. This is something that happened with Environmental Choice New Zealand and New Zealand Steel, or I guess Colour Steel Roofing. For about a year ago, we were looking to claim points for using Colour Steel Roofing because it had Environmental Choice New Zealand. But then it sort of turned out that it's the Colour Steel as manufactured and leaving the gate of New Zealand Steel, which was approved by Environmental Choice New Zealand. Now, you and I and nobody can buy Colour Steel from New Zealand Steel because it goes from New Zealand Steel to a roll former like Metalcraft, Steel and Tube, or others. And they then provide it with a profile and some shaping and cut it to measure and deliver it. And they weren't, when Environmental Choice had initially started this certification program with New Zealand Steel, it was always the intent that it would carry through and extend to certain roll formers, but then somehow just dragged on a little bit and never seemed to happen. So now with a bit of, hey, we've got an issue claiming points in Homestar effect, it shook the ground and kickstarted that process again. So now pleased to announce that you can buy off the shelf New Zealand Steel products for roofing, which will give you points. But at this point in time, the rule is only if you buy it from Metalcraft in East Tamaki, Auckland, or Roofing Industries, Rosedale, or Steel and Tube in Hybrid. So be aware of that when it comes to claiming points for Colour Steel or roofing products. If it's through this New Zealand Environmental Choice New Zealand thing, it has to be through these approved roll formers. Green Building Council had provided some crossover period where you could sort of be a bit more lax about who provided it, but that cut off at the end of last year. So moving forward, that is it. So look, it can feel a little bit like this when you're comparing lots of different products, which is, I guess, where EnviroSpec comes in. We take the time to go around with product suppliers and look at all that in great depth, and then build it onto the EnviroSpec website, and you can go on there and have a look at searching a product by Green Building Rating Tool. So you just use this drop-down search engine on the left. Right now we've got an example where in Homestar version 4 looking for insulation product by the looks of it, and then you just drill down those drop-downs. They are a complete replica of the Green Star or the Homestar, whatever rating tool menu structure. And then it just spits out a few lists, products list, and it shows the different points available. So some here are worth 1 point, some here are worth 2 points. And then you can just click on the view button on the right and go to the product page and download this. So this is what we call the Green Building Summary Sheet. And it is effectively that summary sheet showing how this particular product fits into all the different green building rating systems, and how many points you can claim in each of those credits or petals or whatever you call it, depending on the rating program. And this is a document that is accepted by the Green Building Council. It contains a document code, which you can see on the left page at the top, and that matches with a full-blown evidence submission pack, which the website can generate. And so the Green Star assessors can have access to that by a sort of back-end entry into the website and just punching in that document code. So I think that's about it for now, and probably a good time to move on to questions.
Okay, great. Thanks for the presentation, Brad, Dani and Alex. Thanks for sharing that all with us. As always, we do have a bit of time for question and answers, and quite a few have been coming through. Just remember there's a chat box for question and answers. Please pop in any there. Just one quick thing, that this is being recorded, so we'll make it available within the next week on our NZGBC online video library, so have a check on there soon. And we will go through to questions. So for one here, so for products such as coatings packaging, Is recycled content counted towards points for these?
Coatings, packaging, so the actual bucket of the pail itself. So no.
I do not think so.
No.
No. Look at the actual product itself.
Thank you.
No, there's always an innovation opportunity there.
Would an EPD or LCA look at that though for a product?
Possibly.
Yes. So
Yeah.
potentially, if you do Ecolabel / EPD, it might cover it. Not sure. Not to discourage it, but yeah.
It probably does actually. Yeah.
So ISO 14001 is third-party verified. Why is it not recognized for points in Green Star?
Can I answer that?
Maybe, yeah.
So in a sense, it is and it was. If anyone's working on a Green Star version 3 project still, it is recognized and you can still claim part points. On a Homestar project, it still is recognized and you can claim part points. For the new Green Star design and build, it isn't recognized anymore. That's come from, I guess, the structure of that new rating program in Australia. However, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Maybe that could be some feedback you guys might want to provide to the Green Building Council. There is an element of you're not actually achieving anything. You're measuring what you're doing, and you've got a program for continuous improvement in place. But you could be a terrible polluter and have ISO 14001.
Most of them are.
In a sense, doing an LCA and EPD is a little bit the same thing, but with the huge costs and involvement of doing an LCA and EPD, you're pretty guaranteed that you will be taking some action subsequently to rectify any of the items that they throw up. So it is recognized in the older Green Star tools. It is recognized in Homestar. It isn't recognized anymore in Green Star, the new one. And I guess that's just the way it is until maybe there's a technical clarification one day. But that.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget. I mean, the other benefit of EPDs, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically it's transparent.
Correct.
And so you can get all that information, and there it is. You can look at it. In ISO 14001, you're not doing that per se. You just have a certificate saying I'm doing ISO 14001. And once again, you could be the worst company in the world and you could still get it. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Another one saying that they understand the requirement for tracking COC from FSC registered forest. FSC manufacturer supplied through to the project. What do you do if the FSC timber is stored at a non-FSC registered supplier prior to arriving at a project? Therefore, the COC is broken. But in essence, the timber is still FSC. Does the warehouse supplier require FSC certification?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not the greatest expert in FSC, but this is as far as my understanding goes. So essentially, yes, the chain of custody is broken, and that's going to be a problem. And effectively, I believe my understanding is if that goes to any handler that is other than like a Bunnings or a Mitre 10, where they just put it on the front shelf in front of the customer and you pick it up from there, then that creates an issue with the chain of custody. Mm-hmm. So well, a couple of, I'm the guy providing the tips. So a cheat and a workaround is to get, if it's just for purposes of being stored, and that's just because that's necessary for this project and the way it's organized, you can potentially see if the invoice could go directly from the supplier to the project, and then that provides that, the evidence that this product and quantity and documentation is FSC compliant and the chain of custody is not broken. And then just if there is any money involved for storing the product in a warehouse or something, that could be a separate invoice going from that company back to the supplier. So there is a little workaround. Obviously, the ideal situation would be that the intermediate company here in New Zealand also gets FSC certified and can just pass on that chain of custody. And If enough projects are asking for it, you know, it creates a business case that says, well, if I have to spend, I don't know, $5,000 doing this, maybe it's worth my while.
Becoming certified, yeah, chain of custody, yeah. I mean, short answer is you're highly discouraged to do that, right?
Yeah, it's a workaround, but in some cases, it's the only way.
Thank you. Another one here from Richard. So saying, are recycled plastics such as recycled ocean plastics likely to be included as future complying materials?
Well, once again, if you can prove the recycled content of the material, then it could fulfill that recycled content requirement. Yeah. So the product manufacturer would have to provide that. What's that, Dani?
I recycle plastic content like some carpets, but yes, and obviously, you know, at least from a Homestar perspective, as you know, we are developing Homestar version 5 now. So the tool is live, and as things change, as there's new trends, we have new knowledge, we will consider things.
I guess to drill down a little bit deeper though. Right now, I don't think it would be you get any additional credit for being plastic from the ocean that's been recovered,
No.
as compared to, you know, basically recycled content from a sorting station from a company here in New Zealand. But it still would be given a point or credit for it.
Okay, thank you. So someone's noted that you mentioned Declare has been pulled off Green Star. Does Declare's red list free go on in lieu of that, which would be the EPD aspect of Declare?
No. Watch the space. That might change right now with Declare, but right this minute, Declare cannot be used as eco label.
For Green Star.
For Green Star, yes.
Obviously still works for LBC.
I'm so sorry, I'm still recognizing it.
So why are VOC not important RE non-carpet flooring and insulation?
The answer to that question lies with the Green Building Council of Australia. I actually worded the same question, and I don't think it's a question that's going to necessarily disappear off the table. I myself need to get that answer from the Green Building Council of Australia. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
I guess maybe watch the space. I mean, this is a somewhat new tool to us, and perfect world we would have addressed all these things way back when, but we're still addressing some issues, so this might change. So watch the space going forward.
From a Homestar perspective, we do recognize for floor coverings, so it says floor coverings, not necessarily carpets. So any kind of flooring that include VOCs, you can use in MAT 2. So we do look at that. Insulation, in Homestar, we only look at the interior surfaces. So because insulation is inside the wall, we don't look at that.
Thank you. So another one here, is there a plan to develop points awarded for EPD based on result of EPD? It seems points are awarded now because one is held without consideration of whether the result is good or bad. Will EPD for similar products be compared?
Brad's looking at me as if I mean, historically, I do know the answer to that question is eventually yes, one day. And the aim is to first encourage people to do LCA and EPD and have a big enough data set that you can then compare products, which won't be by you or me, it will be by the scientists at brands and so on and so forth, that you can then look at that data set and say, okay, if we set the bar here, you know, now you can set some performance requirements and then and let people aim for those. So it's a two-step process. It's a slow two-step process because it's been the same argument since 2007. But I guess the take-up of LCA and EPD is a slow one. So maybe in Green Star version 7 or 8, I don't know. But so the answer is eventually yes, but first get the data set.
But that is why you only get 0.75 for an EPD, because we acknowledge that it could be a really bad product, but at least it's being transparent about it.
So there's a few questions here that have been kindly answered by Dani as well, but I thought they'll be good to put to the audience as well. So one of them, so are VOC emissions being considered? The rest of the world places high importance on this for internal products.
Well, I mean, yeah, I thought we talked about it. It's one of the credits that we look at. Yeah, we're looking at indoor air quality, environmental quality for buildings to make sure it's better for people. So that's credit 13.1 in the new tool. And Homestar looks at it also. Yeah.
Another one here is saying, is there any inspection during the construction process of the Green Building Council? Obviously, Dani, you had a good answer to this. Just for those who want to know about the inspection during the process.
Yeah. So, are you referring to the question about how do you ensure compliance?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two sides to this. One side is the materials actually, complying with and getting that certification. So this is why we refer to third-party certifications, and which is also why we recognize higher points, that we award higher points for certifications that are third-party verified, and then even more certifications that are like Ecolabels that have sort of improvement requirements, and that are required to be renewed regularly, versus compared to something that's it's self-declared. So that is the reason for that, and this is why we refer to third-party organizations who are dedicated in that space to do that work. We know they go through an audit every year or every 2 years to keep that certification updated, and that's why we require those, rather than as Brad was saying before, just because you say you're sustainable, you're not sustainable. On the other side, all our projects, so this is a little bit of a wording confusion here. Green Star assessments, Green Star projects are compiled by GSAPs, Green Star accredited professionals. Homestar, it's the Homestar assessor. So it's their responsibility to do the assessment and collect the evidence. Then it's audited by independent professionals who are themselves GSAPs and Homestar assessors, who in this case we call for Green Star assessors and Homestar auditors. So they do the audit, and it's a paper-based audit. And what they do is to basically check that requirements are met, which is why you need to have good evidence. And they're pretty good at picking up when something is missing. Does that
yeah, thank you very much, Dani. I think
there's a couple of questions there. Is EnviroSpec updating their database? Is very useful. Thank you. Yes, so continuously, yes, but it's also a lot of work. So yes, and if there is something that you spot on there that isn't up to date, please email me, alex@envirospec.co.nz. There was a question just there about EMI code for VOCs. Now, EMI code actually used to be EMI code EC1 and EC1 Plus, I think, used to be on the older Ecolabel recognized table. And now that table's been split in two with, for the moment, only the sort of full lifecycle based Ecolabels like the green tags and environmental choice. And there's a separate table that is suggested will be published about the VOC emission one. So hopefully EMI code will reappear back on there. Brad has just grabbed the technical manual from me and is flicking through it. So we'll maybe there's an update on that Brad will provide in a second. And there was another question there about please repeating the inclusion and exclusion changes for timber and FSC. And so yes, so in the old Green Star, if you look under MAT 6 credit, which is the timber one, there's a table in there that says which timber uses are needing to demonstrate compliance with FSC, and some, which is those sort of interior joinery, balustrades, specialist uses of timber, didn't need to demonstrate compliance with FSC. However, in the new Green Star design and as built, it's 95% of all timber. And it literally says somewhere down the line, that exact bullet point, internal and external joinery, windows, doors, and other specialist uses of timber such as balustrades, are included in that count. So refer to Green Star technical manual version, the new one, page 236.
Any other questions? So I know.
There's one there about if paint is applied off-site, so maybe at factory or trying to be installed on-site, does it need to be counted? And the answer is no. It's only for coatings that are wet applied on-site. So anything that's painted off-site, powder coated, or fabricated off-site, in that sense, doesn't need to be part of that tracking spreadsheet.
Great. There was a question there specifically asking for some more details. Do just email in the person who was asking about National Steel so we can talk more about that. You didn't give any of your details, so just send through an email and we can answer your question.
Yeah, email it at greenstarnz@nzgbc.co.org.
Tom?
Sorry, I was trying to read a question, but it's this speed.
So I think, do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, we might.
Feel free to, if there's any further questions, send me an email too. Again, alex@envirospec.co.nz. I even think to be reconfirmed with the Green Building Council, there might be a bit of an opportunity to set up a sort of support structure where the questions can go to EnviroSpec first, and probably 95% of them can get answered that way. And then if there's the real hard ones that need addressing with the Green Building Council, we can facilitate that discussion to see if anything needs to be resolved or a technical clarification or so on and so forth. So feel free to contact me as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll just round off there. Just again to clarify that this is a first of our webinar series in products and materials. Do get in touch if you want to be involved in a future webinar. So we're just planning our next month's one, which should be on our website shortly. But for now, we've got a webinar coming up on the 14th of July. So building for climate change. So this webinar will be from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Do remember we have lots of online videos on our website, so head there. So they're free for all our members. And finally, we do really value your feedback and want to make these webinars as appropriate as possible. So if you do have a few minutes, please fill in the feedback form and let us know how to make them even better. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Brad, Dani and Alex, and we hope to see you at a future webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.